Hi, welcome to the channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm going to talk about Germany as a sovereign nation and whether World War II has ended or not. There are actually two events that are currently effective. The one was that late last year, a number of Germans were arrested on the principle of plotting a coup d'etat in Germany, the most ridiculous idea. And secondly, basically that with the supply of German tanks, which are again rolling over Ukrainian soil against the Russians, basically states a reborn of the German nation, and that rattles the cage of a number of people fearing the rise of Germany as a powerful, warlike type of nation. If you're interested in the subject, please watch and continue watching, and hopefully you can understand and agree with what I have to say. Welcome back and to the discussion. Now, before I start, I would like to say and stress that, firstly, this is an academic exercise. Even if I'm right, it doesn't matter, because no court in Germany or in the world will allow the view that I'm trying to present. But I believe this view is legally correct, but it is impossible for the West to acknowledge it, especially America. Secondly, there are about two subjects that are difficult to argue. The first one is politics and the second one is religion. Now, it doesn't help if I try to present facts that are part of seen as conspiracy theories or unknown sources or unreliable sources. And typically, if you want to argue against, let's say, religions, and you are a Muslim and you argue against a Christian, there's no point in quoting the Quran, because a Christian doesn't accept the Quran as a valid document or a source of information. So if you want to, say, argue a Christian, then you have to use the information that is provided and that it recognizes by himself as legitimate. So in this case, I am not quoting or referring to any sources of my own. The basic source of all this information is in Wikipedia. Now, we all know that Wikipedia is not a reliable source per se, but it does represent the narrative of the Western world. So you think that Germany is a sovereign nation, then you must accept the facts that are presented in Wikipedia, because that is what supports your argument. But unfortunately, the facts that are presented in Wikipedia denies you that conclusion. If you are carefully reading it, thinking about it, and assembling the information and statements that are actually currently being done. So please keep in mind, this is Wikipedia. It comes from Wikipedia, your source, not mine. Any case, just for the sakes, just to get the ball rolling, I have stated many times before that history is written by the victors. And I quoted an African poet who stated that until a lion gets its own historian, the hunter and the hunt will be glorified, which means that's a biased version. History is a biased version of events based on the opinion and the wishes of the victor. So let's ask you some simple questions. Everybody should know why what started the First World War. And the First World War should have started, or stated as it started with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne. And that started the whole ball rolling. But what nobody really tells you about this is that Austria-Hungary considered Serbia as a threat to itself, and there was some animosity between the two countries. And after the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, there was more than a month's worth of political negotiations and an effort to ensure peace. But unfortunately, that was not successful. And Austria-Hungary basically declared war against Serbia. Well, who was the partners of Austria-Hungary? That was Germany and the Ottoman Empire. And they had defense agreements, just like all the members of NATO, and it's covered by Article 5. So if one country believes is being attacked, then the rest of the NATO members, based on Article 5, can join the fight and defend that country, that member. And that's precisely what happened. And on the other side, we had the Allies, which consist out of France, United Kingdom, Russia, Italy, and Japan. But I must state that at that period, there were a lot of conflicts, wars, animosity between various countries, mistrust. So wars were much more common that time in European countries than what it is today. So the question is, if Austria-Hungary has started the war against Serbia, why is Germany identified as a culprit? Why is Germany blamed for everything of World War I? Why was Germany penalized so hard by the Treaty of Versailles and had to pay so much reparations, and there was no effort of any compromise from the Allied forces regarding Germany? Germany didn't start World War I, but why? Everybody tells you that Germany is guilty. So that's point number one. Point number two is a simple question. When do you think the World War I stopped? The general idea, it stopped on the 11th of November 1918. But that's a fallacy. The First World War didn't stop at that stage, or end at that stage. There was an armistice signed on that date. That means all fighting stopped. But it was not a peace agreement. And if there's no peace agreement, the war hasn't ended. And if you argue against that, then you have to argue against South and North Korea. They're still in a state of war. There is no peace agreement, although they don't shoot at each other. Same thing. So in any case, so when did the war really, a peace deal really end? It started. Well, the armistice was 3 times extended until the Treaty of Versailles was signed in June in 1990. 19, which is about 6 months later, 7 months later. But the Treaty of Versailles only took effect on January 1920, which is more than a year after the armistice. And that is the correct date where peace was signed and World War I stopped. In any case, third question is, where do you think the battle line was, or the front line was, when the armistice was signed? We all know that in the Second World War, the Allied forces entered Germany and went up to Berlin, and basically then that was the end of the Second World War. So where do you think the First World War stopped? Well, it didn't stop in Germany. The last offensive was the Mezieres-Argonne offensive, and that was in France and Belgium. And then following is actually a map of the front lines. So as you can see, it was not that Germany was defeated as a whole. Germany was actually exhausted and had its own internal problems. There was a huge mutiny by the Navy, German Navy, which spread through the whole country. There were a lot of desertion and low morale in the German soldiers. The Kaiser Wilhelm actually abdicated, and a democratic Weimar Republic was established, etc., etc. So Germany as a whole was collapsing, not only military, but as a complete. And that was the establishment of the Weimar Republic. And that was basically the reason why the First World War ended. But coming back to the reason of the sovereignty of, is Germany a sovereign state? And before I actually address it, the Reichsberger movement is characterized by a rejection of the modern Federal Republic of Germany. And it denies its legality and legitimacy of the authority of the federal state or the local governments in Germany. The Reichsbergers believe that the German Empire borders of 1932 or 1871 borders still exist, and that the modern Federal Republic of Germany is an administrative construct still occupied by Allied powers. And unfortunately, I have to conclude with them. But I will explain. Now, the German Reich was a constitutional name for the German nation that existed from 1871 to 1945. The Federal Republic of Germany asserted, following its establishment in 1949, that within its boundaries it was a sole legal continuation of the German Reich and consequently not a successor state. And unfortunately that is untrue. And I will get to that. Now, the Federal Republic does not apply the term Third Reich to Nazi Germany, as the Hitler regime is considered to have been a criminal state and a criminal enterprise masquerading as a state, and hence never in any respect a legitimate state organization of the German Reich. And again, that is also false. So let's go back why it is 1871. At the 1871 unification of Germany, which is aside from Austria, the Reich was established constitutionally as a federation of monarchies, each having entered the federation with a defined territory, and consequently the unitary nationalism of the German Reich was initially specified as per Article 1 of the 1871 Constitution, in territorial terms as the lands within the former boundaries of this particular subset of German monarchies. And here is basically a map of the German Reich. And you can see it is extensive, a lot larger than it is today. And again, remember, these were monarchies that decided on their own to come together and establish the German Reich. And in these areas, the German people basically stayed. Now, the definition of the German Reich was then transformed into what was defined in the constitution of the Weimar Republic. That's the one that followed after World War I. Where Article 1 identifies the Reich as deriving its authority from the German national people, while Article 2 identifies the state territory under the Reich as the lands which, at the time of constitution adoption, were within the authority of the German state. So it's a clear definition of what is a German Reich and what is really Germany. Now we come back to, well, we actually proceed to the Nazi Germany. And we all know that basically Adolf Hitler came into power in 1933. And the first thing Hitler was done was, when he was elected, and he was made Chancellor of Germany, he enacted the Enabling Act. Now, this is a big act that is basically considered the pinnacle of power grab by Adolf Hitler and the destruction of the Weimar Republic. But it's all, again, it's not true. Enabling Act of 1993 was officially titled the Gesetz zur Behebung der Not von Volk und Reich. And then they give the translation, law to remedy the distress of the people and the Reich, which is totally false. It is for the Not in German betekent actually sort of an emergency. In Afrikaans you call it nood. It's more like offense against a danger. So you are threatened. Yes, that's one. It is a law to alleviate the threats that the nation and the Reich experience. That would be a much better translation. So, in any case, in South Africa we had similar laws. In our laws we called it, during apartheid's era, the Emergency Act. In America you have the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act in America violates some paragraphs of the American Constitution. And then we had all these laws during the COVID pandemic where we were locked down and our human rights were trampled on according to 99% of the world's constitutional. So that was also an emergency act. You can call this Enabling Act nothing more than an emergency act in order to counter the threat. And it was a law that gave the German cabinet, mostly important the Chancellor, the powers to make and enforce laws without the involvement of the Reichstag or the Weimar President Paul von Hindenburg. So the Reichstag is nothing more than the, say, American Senate. Or in South Africa, we have our parliament, all the chosen, basically, representatives, politician representatives. Which is the same as the Patriot Act, which is the same as the executive order that the American president can do. He doesn't need the Senate to approve it. So this Enabling Act is nothing special. It's all the same as in multiple countries that they have. And one has to think about why did he enact it? Well, at the Great Depression of October 1929 was severely impacting Germans' progress. There was high unemployment and subsequent social and political unrest, which could actually lead to the collapse of the coalition of the Weimar government. And it was so bad, in any case, that certain political parties, members and so on, were killing each other openly on the street. So basically, Germany was in chaotic circumstances. It was so bad that from the March of 1930 onwards, President Paul von Hindenburg used emergency powers, same as the Enabling Act, to back Chancellors Heinrich Brüning, Franz von Papen, and General Kurt von Schleicher. And the Great Depression, exaggerated by Brüning's policy of deflation, led to a great surge in unemployment. And we also know about all the effects of the Treaty of Versailles, the huge war reparations Germany had to pay, the hyperinflation, and these all led to chaos of the Weimar Republic. The democratically Republic of, in any case, which was chaotic. And then in 30th January 1933, Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler as Chancellor to head a coalition government. And actually after that, Hitler established the Enabling Act, the Emergency Act, the Emergency Powers. So, this is nothing special, but it is seen by West and by historians as the turning point. Well, after that, Germany, well, the first thing that Hitler did is he always believed the Communist parties was the biggest threat, and he banned them immediately. And they had about 80 seats in the Reichstag, the parliament, and actually all the 80 were sort of vacated. And I think Adolf Hitler arrested the communists. But I'm not totally sure. But I think that's what he did. In any case, he didn't have any referendums, he didn't have any elections afterwards. Well, 33, it should have been in 38. But in 38, there probably was already some problems in terms of aggressions and wars. So, I wouldn't put that much in, but I'm not talking about Adolf Hitler. What is more concerned is about the Nazi regime. Just remember, the Enabling Act never substituted the German constitution, the Weimar Republic's constitution. It never superseded that or set it aside. It functions in a similar way than the Patriot Act. So the Weimar Constitution continued throughout the Nazi regime, if you want to call it like that. Okay. So in any case, following Hitler's suicide in April 30, 1945, he appointed in his will a successor, and that is called, he was called Grand Admiral Karl Donitz. But for some other reason, he didn't want to do it, and he gave the he did it, but he gave the task of forming a political administration to the leading minister, Lutz Graf Schwerin von Krosigk, who consequently established the Flensburg government. So there was a continuation after Hitler's death. There was a continuation of the German government. And there was not a chancellor, but a government, and that was called the Flensburg government. But unfortunately, it had no de facto central governmental authority within Germany, and it was not recognized by any Axis, Allied, or neutral government. And in my opinion, this recognition, or this lack of recognition, is actually where the legal fault gets introduced into the matters of the legal status of the German Reich. Who gave the Allied forces or any other government to decide what is the government of Germany or not? The fact that I didn't recognize them doesn't mean that they didn't exist or had a legal basis. Just because they decided that the Nazi government of Germany was a criminal enterprise, it is their opinion. There is no legal basis for that. The Nazi Germany or Nazi government never usurped, is that the right word in English? The constitution of the Weimar Republic, which still consisted. So this is a very important fact, but that is unfortunately what the Allied forces did. Now again, just for the sakes, The cessation of hostilities between the United States, the Allied forces, and Germany had been proclaimed on the 13th December 1946 by the United States President Harry Truman. But I thought the war ended in 1945. So as you can see, hostilities only ended in 1946, which is more than a year and a half later. However, the end of the state of the war with Germany was not confirmed by the US Congress until 19 October 1951. That's more than 6 years after 45. So the German civilians were legally still considered enemy nationals for a long period after 1945, which you can associate with the armistice treaty. It's funny how these things actually are in the real world. And then in the Petersburg Agreement on November the 22nd of 1949, it was noted that the West German government wanted an end to the state of war, but the request could not be granted. The US state of the war with Germany was maintained for legal reasons, and although it was softened somewhat, it was not suspended since the US wanted to retain a legal basis for keeping a US force in Western Germany. So the war actually ended, but the Americans didn't want to end. Because, well, the animosity started to get between the Soviet Union and America. And then during 1951, many former Western allies did end the state of war with Germany. Here about Australia, Canada, Italy, New Zealand, the Netherlands, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. That was in 1951. The state of war between Germany and the Soviet Union was ended in early 1955. Sovereignty of the Federal Republic of Germany was granted on May the 5th, 1955, which is also illegal. But we will get to that. So as you can see, really, World War II ended a lot later than what we all know. In any case, special rights were, however, maintained, for example, in relation to West Berlin, which was not permitted to formally become part of the Federal Republic, which means that West Berlin was not part of Germany. The Germany that was sovereignty given in 1955. A military presence was also maintained until the full implementation in 1994 of the Treaty on the Final Settlement with respect to Germany, also known as the 2+4 Treaty, which was signed in 1990. This means no end of war, no sovereignty, no really, all fudging and meshing and creating an image of inner war and sovereignty, but no actual, really under legal status. And under the terms of that treaty, that the one in 1990, the four powers renounced all rights they formerly held in Germany, including Berlin, and as a result, Germany became fully sovereign on March 15, 1991, which we're also going to contest and show it was wrong. So what did happen in 1945? Well, that was the unconditional surrender of the German armed forces, and it was signed by nominated representatives of the three German armed services of the military high command. And it was signed on May the 9th in Berlin, Karlshorst, from which it was purely military capitulation, no direct consequences for the legal status of the civilian authority of the German Reich. That means basically peace was never signed. It was only an unconditional surrender by the German armed forces, and no agreement was signed with the civilian part, which is really the German government. But nevertheless, as all civilian central authority and power within Germany had already been extinguished de facto at the death of Adolf Hitler. I don't know why they say that, and I can't agree with that. And as a perpetuation of the Nazism in any form could not be countenanced, the surrender of all remaining military authority confirmed for the Allied powers the total legal extinction of the former German state. It's a point of view of the American or the Allied powers. It doesn't mean they are right. It doesn't mean it's a legitimate view. The government is still the government. It was elected by the German people. And if you decide it is illegal, that's your problem. Doesn't make it illegal. It was never done by a coup d'etat internally. It was overthrown, if you want to call it, by an external force. Doesn't make it illegal. The German government still existed. Doesn't matter how you argue it. Well, basically it says the historians have treated 9 May 1945 as a date at which Nazi Germany ceased to exist. Well, that's how it is viewed by the victors. In any case, so that was on the 9th of May, and on the 23rd of May, the Allied forces closed down the Reichsberger administration, the one that was a continuation of Hitler's government, the Reichsberger government. And all the members were arrested. Well, that's good news. You arrest the German government, and then what's that? And then you declare there's no more government. Doesn't make it legally right. But in any case, it formalized a legal vacuum, which was only filled on June the 5th, when the commander-in-chief of the 4 Allied powers announced in the Berlin Declaration the assumption of supreme authority in Germany. So that's when the Allied forces said, hey, I am now the German government. The Allied forces are now the German government. The Allied forces not only took control of the government, but also assumed all the powers and legal authority of the German state as a whole. It was explicitly stated that this would not affect the annexation of Germany, although the 4 powers asserted their authority as a sole repository of German state power to determine the future boundaries of German territory. I don't understand that. So the Allied forces take control of the government and say, now we are the controller, and we have all the legal authority and power. We run the whole government, and then we decide what is the boundaries of Germany, German territory. No, you can't do that. That is assumption of power that you don't legally have, because there was a government, number one, and number two is you are a conqueror. And if you change the territory, that's a no-no. It's not within your powers, yes, in your military power, but not in your legal power to change the boundaries. And you must also know that the Allied forces did not sign a peace deal with the Reichsberger administration, which in my opinion was the legitimate government of a German Reich at the time. But then, let's go on. So in 1945, the Potsdam Agreement was reached, and this is a very, very important agreement. And it stated or specified that the full peace treaty concluding World War II, including the exact delimitation of German post-war boundaries, required to be accepted by the government of Germany when a government adequate for the purpose is established. That means a German government must be established. And the Federal Republic, even the German Federal Republic, current one, always maintained that no such government could be said to have been established until the people of East and West Germany has been reunited with a free democratic state. But just remember now, it says East and West Germany, but those are only, well, the Federal Republic, that's Western Germany, and the DDR, that's Eastern Germany. But if you look at the Weimar Republic boundaries and the German Reich in 1871, then that area is a lot larger than the current Germany. So the whole Germany was not united, so even the Federal Republic is incorrect. Well, the key question was whether Germany can remain bounded to the east by the Oder-Neisse line as a unified Germany in signing a peace treaty without qualification. Now, the Oder-Neisse line is the current border between Germany and Poland. And because a huge Prussia, as per map, as you can see, that's in the north of Poland, Prussia, that is still Germany. And you can even see Danzig. Danzig is the today Kaliningrad, which is so Russia possesses. No, that's German territory. So in my opinion, until those two large sections and some on the eastern border of Poland are not reunited with the current Federal Republic of Germany, Germany has not been reconstituted as per the German Reich or the Weimar Reich. But they claim that the current Germany is a continuation of the Weimar Republic, which it is not, because Prussia and Danzig are not part of the Federal Republic of Germany. And therefore it is not the Weimar Republic or the German Reich. You see the problem? And therefore no peace agreement can be signed. Here you can see a nice map of the parts of Germany that still must be united with the current Germany before you can even argue that German is a continuation of the Weimar Republic, German Reich. Now let's look at the German Constitution. The Constitution of the German Reich, which is usually known as the Weimar Constitution, was the constitution that governed Germany during the Weimar Republic, which was between 1919 and 1933. And the constitution declared Germany to be a democratic parliamentary republic with legislature elected under the proportional representative. And this constitution technically remained in effect throughout Nazi era from 1933 to 1945. So, let's look today at Ukraine. Effectively, Zelensky has implemented emergency powers. He has banned the opposition, he has banned negative media, he has locked up some of the opposition members, he has done a lot of other things that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime was accused of. So if, say, the war in Ukraine is finished, will he also be considered his regime as illegitimate? No. So why do we consider then the Nazi one? The constitution still existed. It was all emergency powers, and legally it's still valid. In any case, let's get back to the German constitution. The German state's official name was the Deutsche Reich until the adoption of the 1949 of the Basic Law. Now remember, they always refer to the German Reich and the Weimar Republic, but the current Germany doesn't want to acknowledge that. They want to call themselves the German Deutsches Reich. That's actually the Deutsche Reich. Sorry, I'm mistakes now. In any case, the Constitution, the Basic Law, was drafted by the lawyer and libertarian politician Hugo Preuss. And Preuss even himself criticized the triple entente decision to prohibit the incorporation of the Republic of German Austria into the German Republic, after the dissolution of Austria-Hungary. And it said was a contradiction of the Wilsonian principle of self-determination of people. And what it actually means is that this Pruyos complained against the Allied forces because when German Austria should have been incorporated into the German Republic after the dissolution of the Austrian-Hungary Empire. And it was actually a contradiction in the right of people to self-determination. And those German Austria wanted to be part of German, but the Allied forces didn't allow that. It's the same like Kosovo is right. That's self-determination against the will, but it was one-sided. But Crimea is not right. Okay. So the Basic Law of 1949. The Basic Law for the Federal Republic of Germany was based on the continued existence of the German state as a whole. It was adopted by West Germany in 1949 as an interim constitution. The West German constitution was approved in Bonn on 8 May 1949 and came into effect on 23 May after having been approved by the occupying Western allies of World War II on the 12th of May. Did you listen? It was an interim constitution. It was approved by the occupied Western Allied forces, not by the people. No referendum. In any case, after reunification in 1990, the Basic Law remained in effect and was the so-called Constitution of the United Germany, consisting of the Federal Republic of Germany and East Germany. It remained in effect, so it's still an interim constitution. And it was called the United Constitution, but no referendum was held on that. And if there was no referendum, as per the Potsdam Agreement, then that cannot be accepted. In any case, the German word Grundgesetz may be translated as either basic law or fundamental law. That's a stupid translation. But the term constitution was avoided as the drafters regarded the Grundgesetz as an interim arrangement for a provisional West German state, expecting that an eventual reunified Germany would adopt a proper constitution enacted under the provision of Article 146 of the Basic Law, which stipulates that such a constitution must be freely adopted by the German people, meaning referendum, meaning also reunified Germany, including the areas that are currently in Poland. So, but this never happened. No referendum, and as you will see later on, this, the whole story was a reunified Germany was also not done. Now, I would like to stop here. Call it as the end of part 1. If I'm going to talk long, I'm going to talk another hour, and then you're going to get really bored. So, if you like what you heard or you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends. And until next time, cheers.